And I took the decision that we would take the hard decisions first. I think anybody who's turned around, I don't know, an organisation or a business. We've got a billionaire Prime Minister and a billionaire Prime Minister, both of whose families have used schemes to avoid millions of pounds of tax, smearing a working class woman. And rather than sit around, we've got them all together today to talk to Angela and to me and to Rachel Reid.
Did you know that 68% of British voters feel Keir Starmer has lost touch with working class concerns? This startling statistic reveals a growing disconnect between Labour's leader and the people he claims to represent. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now back to the video, but it's not just numbers. Real lives are at stake. From pensioners shivering through winter to small business owners facing bankruptcy, the human cost of Starmer's leadership is becoming impossible to ignore. When Keir Starmer took the reins of the Labour Party, he painted a picture of hope and change.
Mr. Speaker, I'm privileged to be the proud owner of a copy of the former Prime Minister's new book. It's a rare, unsigned copy. You're going to turn something around. You have to do the hard yards up front. Don't look at a tough decision and then leave it for a year or two. So we're doing the tough stuff. But in the budget, which was probably the toughest, I'm really pleased that we were able to put so much money into the National Health Service.
He promised to be a champion for the working class, tackle rising energy costs for pensioners, and support small businesses struggling under the weight of high taxes. But as time has passed, the stark contrast between Starmer's pledges and the current reality has left many Labour supporters feeling betrayed and disillusioned. Take, for example, Starmer's commitment to addressing the energy crisis facing Britain's elderly population. Despite his impassioned speeches about protecting vulnerable pensioners, many are still shivering through winter, forced to choose between heating and eating. The promised support has failed to materialize, leaving countless older citizens feeling abandoned by a party that once claimed to be their advocate. Small business owners, too, have found themselves let down by Starmer's leadership. Labour MP Neil Duncan Jordan didn't mince words when he expressed his frustration, stating he was dumbfounded, angry, and disappointed by the party's failure to support these vital economic pillars. With many small enterprises teetering on the brink of bankruptcy due to crushing taxes and economic pressures, Starmer's inaction has only deepened the sense of abandonment felt by hard-working entrepreneurs. But it's not just specific groups feeling the sting of broken promises. Polling data reveals a broader erosion of public trust in Starmer's leadership. A staggering 68% of British voters now believe he has lost touch with working-class concerns. This figure isn't just a statistic. It represents millions of people who once looked to Labour as their voice in Parliament, now feeling silenced and ignored. Critics argue that Starmer's policies seem more focused on maintaining political power than addressing the real needs of ordinary citizens. This perception has led to a growing sentiment of betrayal among his supporters. The Labour leader, who once promised to bring integrity back to British politics, now finds his own credibility under intense scrutiny. The Beergate incident serves as a stark example of this credibility crisis. Starmer's vow to resign if fined over the controversy highlighted the precarious nature of his leadership. While he may have avoided a fine, the incident left many questioning whether his commitment to integrity was genuine or simply a calculated political move. As calls for accountability grow louder, the damage to Starmer's trustworthiness appears increasingly irreparable. The Labour Party, once seen as the champion of the working class, now faces a crisis of identity. With each broken promise and policy U-turn, the gap between Starmer's words and actions widens, leaving many to wonder, can Labour rebuild its credibility, or has Starmer's leadership dealt a fatal blow to the party's relationship with its core supporters? The Labour Party's crisis of identity has ignited a spark among its core supporters. But what happens when that spark catches fire? A grassroots revolt is brewing, and it's not just about broken promises anymore. The people are taking matters into their own hands, and Starmer might not see it coming. What started as subtle murmurs of discontent among Labour supporters has now erupted into a full-blown rebellion. The once loyal base, feeling betrayed and ignored, has transformed their frustration into action. Organised protests are popping up across the country, with demonstrators carrying signs demanding Starmer's resignation. Social media campaigns have gained significant traction, with hashtags like #NieStarmerOut and Labour Betrayal trending regularly. The grievances driving this public anger are numerous and deeply felt. Rising taxes and stagnant wages have left many families struggling to make ends meet. Small business owners, once hopeful for Labour's support, now feel abandoned and left to fend for themselves in an increasingly hostile economic landscape. The perception that Starmer's administration is more concerned with maintaining power than addressing the needs of ordinary citizens has only fueled the fire of discontent. One citizen, speaking at a recent protest, summed up the mood. "People aren't just disappointed, they're furious. We expected one of our own to fight for us. Instead, we feel left behind." This sentiment echoes across social media platforms, where countless individuals share personal stories of economic hardship and frustration with Starmer's leadership. The momentum behind calls for Starmer's resignation is growing at an alarming rate. Critics argue that his policies lack substance and fail to deliver real change. Many citizens state that the UK is in worse shape now than when Starmer took over, pointing to the rising cost of living and the perceived lack of effective opposition to the current government. As this grassroots movement gains strength, the potential consequences for Starmer and the Labour Party loom large. The once unthinkable prospect of a leadership challenge from within the party is now being openly discussed in political circles. The question on everyone's mind is whether Starmer can weather this storm, or if the growing chorus of dissent will force him to step down. The implications of this revolt extend far beyond Starmer's political career. It raises fundamental questions about the future of the Labour Party and its relationship with its traditional base. Can Labour reconnect with the working class it once championed, or has the divide become too wide to bridge? As the pressure mounts, British politics finds itself at a crossroads, with the potential for a seismic shift in the political landscape. The pressure on Keir Starmer to resign is reaching a boiling point. With public trust eroding and grassroots movements gaining momentum, his leadership hangs by a thread. The Labour Party now faces a critical juncture. Can it survive this crisis of identity, or will Starmer's potential departure trigger a seismic shift in its direction? The implications stretch far beyond one man's political career. Labour's future as a credible opposition force is at stake. If Starmer goes, who will step up to reconnect with the working class base? The party risks further alienating its core supporters if it fails to address their concerns. As British politics stands at this crossroads, one question looms large. Will the Labour Party emerge from this turmoil stronger and more in touch with the people, or is this the beginning of a fundamental realignment in UK politics?